Welcome to the Richmond Film Network Podcast, your all-access pass to the world of independent cinema. Each week, we go beyond the credits and sit down with the creatives who turn vision into reality. Tune in weekly to find out who's on the RFN pod.
Hello and welcome to the RFN Podcast. My name is MK Marte, your guest host. And with me here today are co-directors Kenneth Nguyen and Jaden Kilkenny to talk about their film Breathe, which screens at the RFN Indie Fest Saturday, August 9th during the 2 p.m. student spotlight at the Park RVA. Kenneth, Jaden, welcome to the show.
For having me.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, so let's start with the emotional weight of the center of the film. So in your director's statement, there's a line that really stuck with me, and it's, "Even your breath feels like it weighs too much." How did you translate that kind of emotional heaviness into the visual and language of the film? So, did you have a specific moment or scene where, that weight really came into focus?
Yeah, I think when we were writing the film, we were considering the soundscape and how it would sound really from the beginning, because how we came up with a strong theme was like how, like, me personally, when I look at or deal with deep thoughts or emotional thoughts, I pay attention to my breath, and like it really grounds me. And so really having that be a central point of the movie, of being able to hear Kieran's breath and how he's able to deal with his emotions, especially during the montage scenes where we designed it to have like a certain soundscape and sort of a rhythm along with the drawers pulling in and out. And we wanted, the audience to really hear that so that they can really be there with the character.
And I feel like a scene where that was like really prevalent outside of the montage scene was the scene where he's dealing with his dad's rage, and his dad's grief is coming out in the form of rage, and he's having to deal with that without feeling like he has the strength to talk, or not feeling like it necessary to talk back to him, and all he can do is sit there and breathe.
Yeah, I really like that perspective. Breathe explores grief not through, like you said, not through breakdowns or climaxes, but through, quiet unraveling. Why is it important for you to portray loss through that kind of stillness?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to show that there's many different ways people deal with grief, and especially like in those moments where you're just by yourself, where there's nothing to do but just sit in that quietness by yourself, dealing with your own emotions, dealing with your own thoughts. And so I think that's important to show that, especially in men as well, and with like masculinity, not everything's just overpouring of emotions, but sometimes there's a quiet too.
Yeah, and I feel like in movies, a lot of times when you see scenes like this that are this emotional, you see it like being portrayed outwardly with very big moments or very big emotional outbursts. But I think not necessarily more realistic, because there are a lot of different ways to express grief, but a very commonly like overlooked one is just kind of the silent moments, the reflection, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think that really adds a lot to the story. The bond between Kieran and his sister feels, really incredibly delicate. What were you trying to say about grief? How it can both connect and isolate people, especially in families. And how did you shape that sibling bond relationship through blocking or performance?
We wanted to show the contrast of how, like, when you're dealing with grief, it can affect your relationships with different people. So, for example, with Kieran, when he was dealing with his parents, it became very, they weren't handling it super well, and they were sort of pushing that pain onto him, especially with the father, that scene of him being enraged. And also with how you deal with it with younger siblings. His little sister, she didn't really know the concept of death yet. So he had to explain it to her in a way that she would understand while also not being too cruel. And then also, as far as blocking, we want to be very intentional with how like it started versus how it ended. The very first shot of the film opens up with that side profile shot of him being alone in that windowsill, and then it ends with him being in the same basically the same frame of him being in that windowsill, but with the sister across from him as well. And we wanted to show that contrast of like dealing with grief, by yourself versus when you have people that can that you can lean on and people that will support you.
Yeah, I think Kenneth pretty much covered it, but a lot of what we're trying to do was kind of show in the relationship that he had with his sister, he had to show strength, even though we've been seeing how much it's been like tearing away at him through this whole film. And similarly, he had to show strength to kind of hold in his own emotions in the scene where he's feeling attacked by his father. So yeah, we kind of wanted to have a lot of different angles, a lot of different ways to look at that specifically.
Yeah, and I think those are both really powerful perspectives to add to the film. The decision to confine everything to a single space, that's pretty bold. How did that limited space come to reflect Kieran's own emotional state?
Well, so this is him being in that room. It was kind of his own like defense mechanism. He was asked by his family to come out the room, and his father mentioned how he had just kind of been stuck in this room since his brother passed, and it was kind of reflective of how he was shutting himself off from the people around him and the people that might be able to help him bear this grief.
Yeah, and especially some people can confine themselves to one area that they feel as like a safe space. Or before the creation of this film, I watched a documentary about how the loss of their children, they would often preserve the room in the exact same manner that from when the child was still with them. And so it's interesting how some people can gravitate towards a loved one's room, especially after they pass.
Yeah, that's really well said. So on to some more visual styles. So visually and sonically, the film feels both intimate and suffocating. You use a lot of handheld shots and extreme close-ups throughout the film. What were you hoping to evoke through those choices, especially when it comes to Kieran's inner world? Did those visual decisions shift at all as you got deeper into production?
Yeah, so actually a lot of the cinematography was inspired by Moonlight and also the TV show Normal People. When I watched those, the cinematography, what stood out to me was that it was shaky and handheld, which it contrasts with like, shooting all on tripod and being steady. So I wanted the handheld movement to really evoke feelings of unease that Kieran's feeling. And then also I wanted a lot of close-ups of Kieran so we can really see his emotions, but also to sort of suffocate him in the frame where he's feeling already trapped inside that room. So yeah, these are a lot of things that me and Jaden considered when we were deciding what shots we wanted to use for this.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much hit everything on the head. Also, he was the cinematographer on this project, so I deferred a lot of the visual style to him.
Yeah, speaking of some more visual styles, the color palette, especially the blue, the reoccurring blue tones, feels carefully chosen. What guided those color decisions, and what kind of emotional response were you hoping to draw out? Did color grading, shift your perception of the film's tone once you reached post, or did you already have that gloomy look in mind?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I said, Moonlight was a big inspiration when I watched that film. I loved the color palette they chose. Some of the themes with masculinity are in both films. But yeah, when we first shot it with it, we used a lot of natural lighting, and a lot of that naturally came out as a sort of blue hues. We added some in post-production just to add to the feeling of melancholy. But yeah, definitely Moonlight was a big inspiration.
And we also kind of wanted to highlight the importance of letting your grief be, I guess, letting others help you deal with your grief. And after the conversation with his sister, we kind of wanted a distinct change because to reflect his sort of change in mindset or kind of reflect how he's being affected by letting other people in. So to be the last frame of the story is one of like the warmest um, shots that we had in the movie because it was reflective of his overall mind state in that moment.
Nice. And would you say that goes for the same when it comes to sound, which was obviously, a really powerful role as well? You hear the breathing, essential part of the film, the humming. Would you say that kind of is a similar take on that?
Yeah, especially with like when you're sitting there with your own thoughts, you definitely start to notice the small things that happen in the house. Like you hear the refrigerator, you hear the cars outside, you hear the birds chirping outside. So yeah, we definitely wanted to incorporate all these natural sounds into the film, especially with such a quiet film. And then boom, there's a big contrast with the dad barging into the room. We wanted that door sound to be very loud to really announce the dad for the first time. So we wanted to show that contrast between the quiet moments and the angry moments. Even when the father steps into the room and then Kieran sort of isolates into his own thoughts, his hearing sort of goes into like a tunnel. We can hear a little bit of the mom crying in the corner, with like shows how Kieran really prioritizes his family relationships even in moments where he's in immense pain.
Yeah, and since it was such a quiet film and so much of what we wanted to focus on was the quiet moments, we thought it was really important to have like the subtle details and everything just kind of be highlighted.
All right, let's talk more about what it took to bring these characters to life. Okay, Jaden, as both co-director and lead actor, how did you balance performing such a quiet, vulnerable role while still staying involved behind the camera? And were there scenes where one role had to take priority over the other?
It was definitely a challenge, but I thankfully had a great co-director by my side who was definitely helping a lot with, like I said, the visual aspect of it. So since he was able to focus on a lot more of the production and behind the camera things, I was able to focus on my own performance and the performance of the other actors with us. But also, I had kind of been with Kieran as a character for a while since we had both written it together as well. I feel that I had a pretty good understanding of Kieran, his mindset, and everything. But I did definitely love the moments where I didn't have to be on camera. There weren't a lot, unfortunately, but it was definitely nice to be able to step behind the camera and help out on that side.
Yeah, I think me and Jaden worked really well as co-directors. We both sort of have like a specialty in different things that we do. Like I come from more of a cinematography background, much more focused on like how it's going to visually look and how it's going to look in the edit and sound wise. And then Jane a lot more into acting and performances. So Jane was able to help a lot with scene directions and like how certain actors should be acting in different ways. It was great when we actually shot the father scenes where they weren't necessarily in the same shot, so Jane was able to really coach the father on how he should be acting in that certain scene, give him good notes, and then also with the scenes with Peyton, the little girl, she was amazing to work with. She was phenomenal. I just want to shout her out because she at such a young age she had such a great emotional depth, and you also have to have like an understanding of like acting, and for her to be able to understand that at that age was great. She was able to take great directions from me and Jaden.
Absolutely second that. She was amazing. It was a blessing, honestly, that we got her.
Okay. So what grounded you emotionally when portraying Kieran? Was there a scene that felt, emotionally vulnerable or difficult to perform? And for you, Kenneth, was there a scene, that was difficult to direct because of, the themes that we are exploring?
I don't necessarily know if there was a scene that was particularly like hard for me to get through as an actor, but I would definitely say like a lot of the moments where it was kind of just me and I had to bring out that emotion out of myself. It was it was a lot of kind of reflecting on myself and also just trying to find Kieran in myself, I guess. And yeah, a lot of the quieter moments, a lot of the moments where it was just me in the room, I would say that helped ground me and also were probably some of the most difficult in terms of making sure I'm portraying the emotion in a realistic way.
Yeah, I think shooting the scenes with Jaden where he was isolated was easier from like I guess behind the camera side because a lot less people uh to interact with on set, a lot less people to block. Um, so I could definitely see from Jaden's perspective, really that's like when the Kieran shows most of his emotions when we're close up with him in isolation. And I mean, Jaden did a phenomenal job being able to show emotions without much dialogue. Scenes where he's alone, he's not talking, so he can't show any of the emotions with what you're saying. So everything's from the face, from your micro facial expressions. And I think he did a great job of not over dramatizing his movements, because also we were so close up on him. A lot of the movements, uh, you know, appear big on screen, but they're very micro in real life. So it's like anything from like the subtle blinks or the twitches in his face. That had to be very purposeful. And also, as far as like a difficult scene to shoot, not necessarily super difficult, but the scene we had to shoot with Ruby, who is Kieran's close friend, played by Summer Seraphin, also a great actress. Um, that scene was a little bit harder because it was a long monologue, and so we're just trying to time it right with Kieran's reactions, and also with the long monologue of what she's saying, making sure it all lines up and also hits the emotional beats that we want it to.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. I think that adds a new layer to the film for me. You mentioned that the shoot came with a number of obstacles. You had to reschedule, recast, reshoot. How did you both stay grounded enough to keep the production going? And did that chaos end up shaping the tone or the urgency of the film at all?
It at some point did eventually end up affecting the urgency of it, because we had kind of wanted to give ourselves a deadline just to make sure that we were going to be efficient and get it out in a timely manner. Um, but Kenneth also was planning on using the film for one of his projects in school. So at one of the points where we had to recast and reschedule, it ended up being do or die at a certain point. But as far as staying grounded throughout the process, we kind of just had to accept that there are things that you can't control, and this is kind of just a part of filmmaking, where there will be obstacles. So you can't anticipate everything, but you have to learn how to adapt and yeah, be open minded, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we really had to. There's a lot of obstacles we ran into. We had to recast the father role a couple times because, for various reasons, like you know, with indie filmmaking, student filmmaking, nothing's really a guarantee. So sometimes an actor would drop out a couple of days before, not give a lot of notice. Sometimes there's actually the second father we casted. It came to shoot day, and all the cast and crew showed up. People were traveling from like Virginia Tech or Northern Virginia or Williamsburg, coming from hours away. We were shooting in Charlottesville, and the father actor didn't show up. And so we contacted him, no response from phone calls, text messages. And he reached out a day later. He said he got in a car accident. So that was super unfortunate. He got a concussion, but I mean, I'm glad to hear he's okay now. But it's just stuff like that where it's like, you can't like, you can't prepare for it. So it was a lot of thinking on our feet, especially with logistics, because we had me and Jaden don't go to the same school. Jaden's from the Richmond area. I go to school in Charlottesville, so about an hour away. We'd still have to coordinate when Jaden can come to shoot. But yeah, I mean, shout out to our producer, Rowan Rosenblum. He was great for, managing logistics. And also just being very hands-on on set as well. But yeah, just a lot of issues that, I guess we embrace with indie filmmaking. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of the process and we enjoy it. So at the end of the day, we were really happy with how the product turned out.
Speaking of indie filmmaking, you're working with, a cast and crew who has to be pretty flexible. How did you manage to keep, people motivated during through these long, uncertain shoot days?
Yeah, especially on the shoot day where the father actor didn't show up and a lot of people and everyone else showed up. That was a moment where we really had to, like, I guess, explain the situation to them, as well as try to shoot as much as we can with what we have and the people that we have that showed up. But honestly, it's a lot of just building relationships and having good conversation with people so that you can build that trust and build that rapport. I mean, I feel like the biggest thing as a director, as I'm starting to learn, shooting more and more films, is just like really building a good relationship with everyone you work with and all the actors, so that if you do run into a roadblock, you guys are on the same side. You can get through this. Like, we're all on the same team. We're all trying to make it to the end goal of finishing this film. So, I mean, everyone on the crew was very patient and understanding.
Yeah, I mean, we had a pretty great team, so they were all willing to work with the changes that happened, and I think they also had an understanding that things happen, and it's indie filmmaking. There's only so much you can do.
Right, and I really like what you said about making good relationships, because it's a lot easier for people to want to work through conflicts with you if they like you and they like working with you. So it's definitely a big one, and the conflicts will definitely arise, especially in independent filmmaking. But we always work through them. So let's talk about what's ahead, what this premiere kind of means to both of you. Breathe is making its world premiere at the RFN Indie Fest in a block specifically made for emerging filmmakers. How does it feel to share the film for the first time in a space like this? And to further elaborate, what are you most excited for or nervous to experience watching it with a live audience?
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I love watching films with a live audience because you can really hear exactly how they're reacting or see how they're exactly reacting. And in a film like this, where it's very quiet, it's sort of like the grief is in the room with us, and there's a lot of tension. So I think I'm just excited to see me and Jane to be able to tell a story that evokes an emotion out of an audience of it. Like, really, we want it to be very impactful. So just excited to see how the audience reacts to it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a dream. This is our first film festival that we're having a premiere at, so it's something that we've had been talking about since we first started trying to do this, and it's just really crazy to be at this point, but that's what you look forward to. So I'm very excited, the most excited to see, like you said, how people react to it, and also the most nervous to see how people react to it. Yeah.
Have you given sneak peeks to friends and family at all for feedback at all? So you kind of maybe have an idea of what people might take away?
Yeah, we watched it with close friends and family. So got that initial reaction, but excited to see how a bigger audience takes it.
He has. I haven't. I haven't gotten any feedback directly, so curious.
Okay, so yeah, it'll be like a genuine, what do you call it? Like a first time experience for real for you. So that'll be fun. Looking ahead, what kind of stories or projects are you both interested in exploring next? Do you imagine like continuing this intimate, grounded style, or are there other genres and things you're curious about trying?
I really like the idea of challenging myself to kind of explore as many different aspects of life as I can. So I plan on each of my projects being at least relatively different from each other. In the process of casting for my next short film, which is a horror, so it's completely completely different from what we had just done. That kind of explores guilt and a little bit of grief. But yeah, I'd like to kind of explore different ideas, different concepts, and different genres even, and just see what I can do, I guess.
Yeah, similar to Jaden, I'm really excited to just keep experimenting with different styles, see what works, see what doesn't. I just came back from a study abroad in Italy, and so I shot a short film over there. It's currently in post-production now, but it's also a drama. I think I do really like working in the genre of drama, and to just keep telling stories like that with family relationships, personal relationships, um, but trying different styles within that, and definitely in different environments as well.
Yeah, that all sounds super exciting, and I can't wait to keep in touch and see what you guys do next. So, thank you both for joining me today on the podcast. Before we wrap, please let our listeners know where they can find out more about Breathe and keep up with your upcoming projects.
Yeah, definitely. We have an IMDb if you want to take a look at it. Also, we're going to be premiering at the Indie Fest where you can watch. If you want to follow along, you can shout out our Instagrams. Kenneth Nguyen 20. I have a website, kennethknguyen.com, if you want to see any more of my works.
I do not have a website, but if you would like to check out my Instagram, it's Jaden.Kilkenny.
That sounds amazing. That's all for today. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Richmond Film Network podcast. Thanks to our guest and to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share. Tune in next week to see who's on the RFN pod. Until then, keep the cameras rolling.